I'm standing in an elevator in Incheon, South Korea, talking to my wife, in English. A woman gets on, looks at my face, looks confused, looks at me again like she's trying to solve a math problem that isn't adding up. I know that look. I've known that look my whole life. I just usually get it in the other direction. Hey, I'm your host. This is I Took the Long Way, a podcast about life, detours, and somehow still being here to talk about it. Pull up a chair. If you've been listening a while, you know episode 10 already, the Korean I don't have, the score I carried my whole life, the bar outside the DMZ, the chow hall breakfast, my wife's family building bridges out of Konglish. That episode ended in a resolved place. I made peace with the gap. Shame stepped aside. Then we went back to Korea for 2 weeks. Turns out peace with the gap and the gap actually closing are two very different things. This episode is that trip. Not a sequel to episode 10, more like an audit. Every theme the show has ever touched showing up at once, in real time, in the country it all traces back to. We spent the first 4 or 5 nights in a hotel in central Seoul. 2 other families from the States were staying there too, and we all hung out back in the States. We're friends. So we walked around Myeongdong, Hongdae, Bukchon, found some good restaurants through trial and error, did the shopping thing, some sightseeing. Walking through Hongdae is always interesting. There's street performers running through full-on choreographed singing and dancing. It's like they're all trying to be the next K-pop idols. We stopped at the Nike store to make some custom shirts, then hit an airsoft range to practice our aim. Man, that was fun. We ended up running through multiple sessions because we liked it so much. The kids did a Korean stamp making class in Insadong, made some custom keyboard clicker keychains at Blingbox, and somewhere in there we had the best pork soup rice I've ever had. That's also where I found my favorite Korean streetwear brand. This is Never That. Apparently, it's known as a Korean Supreme. Simple designs, a lot of 90s hip-hop influence mixed with a military edge, which is probably why it hit me the way it did. But what really got me was walking into the store for the first time and hearing Tupac's "I Ain't Mad At You" blasting through the speakers. Yeah, that got me. Shopping, hanging out, salt bread and iced Americanos everywhere we went. It was fun. Genuinely fun. It was also, I realized later, the version of Korea that most people get. Because the second half of the trip, we moved into my wife's cousin's apartment in a newer part of Incheon, and everything changed. We weren't visitors anymore. We were residents. Sorting recycling into what felt like 6 different categories, running clothes through a Samsung airdresser to dry linen and clothes that a regular dryer would shrink 3 sizes too small. Local restaurants nobody puts on a top 10 list. Trips out to Paju, Suwon, Anyang to see other cousins. A wallet making class. Fast and cheap food delivery. Neighborhood cafes with no English menu. Just life. The Korean speed. I talked to some people at church after I got back, and a lot of them told me the same thing. They don't have close relatives in Korea to stay with, so it's hotels, it's the tourist map. Some of them told me they didn't even really enjoy the trip because it felt like one tourist trap after another. No context, no people, just sightseeing. I almost didn't realize how lucky I was. My wife's family gave me access to a version of this country that most Korean Americans never get to see. I didn't earn that. I married into it. Everything I'm about to tell you, I got to see because of a cousin's spare room in Incheon. I got two pictures in front of me from the trip sitting next to each other, and they tell the whole story of episode 3 better than I ever could in words. Picture 1, Shake Shack, Seoul. My parents, my brother, my wife, my daughter, me. 6 people at one table. Quiet, contained, the whole frame with room to spare. Picture 2, my wife's family. I lost count trying to number the people in it. There's cousins, kids, grandkids, grandparents, someone giving a thumbs up in the back of the shot. It's loud, sprawling, spilling past the edges of the photo. That's our own Hazard County right there in picture 1. 4 people, now 6, who figured out how to survive as a unit because there was never a backup plan. And picture 2 is a thing I used to watch from the outside as a kid. The Sunday table, the cousins running around. The thing episode 3 wasn't even sure I was allowed to long for, since I never technically had it. Last month, I was inside it, at the table, part of it. Both tables are mine now. My brother was in the first picture with me, born and raised in the States, same as me. But he immigrated to Korea as an adult with our parents, and sitting at that table with him, actually in Korea, and instead of just thinking about him from LA, made me rethink something I thought I already had settled. At that lunch, he told me about a trip he's planning to Vietnam this summer. Something to unwind, he said, since he's a teacher and the school year just runs him ragged. Just a normal conversation between brothers about vacation plans. Except normal is exactly what struck me. He wasn't talking about Korea like a place he was still adjusting to. He was talking about needing a break from his actual job, in his actual city, the way anyone talks about needing a break. This is just his life now. In episode 3, I said we both stayed home. Him with our parents in Korea, me with my wife and daughter in LA. I still think that's true. But sitting at that table, hearing him talk about Vietnam like any tired teacher planning summer break, I noticed something else. He belongs to both tables too, just from the other direction. Neither of us took the easy path. We just took different ones. I also met my wife's cousin on this trip. Actually, my wife's cousin's wife. And her story kind of reframed a lot of this. She's Korean American, born in the States, and immigrated to Korea at 9 or 10 and knew zero Korean when she landed. She said it was brutal to adjust. I spent my whole life and basically this whole podcast working through one direction of that equation. Born here, Korean face, negotiating which room I was allowed to belong in. She ran the same equation in reverse, planted there as a kid with none of the language, having to build the entire thing from nothing in the country that was supposed to be hers by blood. She's in her 30s now, with a toddler, speaks perfect Korean, still speaks perfect English. Whatever she went through as a kid, she came out the other side completely bilingual. And I mean bilingual in identity, not just language. She's the first person I've ever met who did it in that direction. And meeting her kind of blew up my whole mental model of what a Korean American story is even supposed to look like. Living in that Incheon apartment taught me things about Korea no tourist trip could. Leaving your phone on a cafe table to go to the bathroom, and it's still there when you get back. Convenience stores with full self-checkout. No cashier watching to make sure you don't walk out with something. Kids, 7, 8 years old, walking around the neighborhood by themselves and nobody blinks. Every car we rode in beeped like crazy if we went even a little over the speed limit. Not a warning light, but an actual insistent beep. It felt very Black Mirror-ish, honestly. Like the car itself was watching and reporting back. Korea runs on trust, not enforced trust like cameras on every corner, just a baseline assumption that people will do the right thing. And mostly they do. I didn't grow up in that. I grew up in a house with nobody home, figuring out a running toilet by myself at 8 years old, because self-reliance was the only tool available to me. Low trust, in the most literal sense. But the values my parents actually handed me, show up, protect your people, don't fracture when it's hard, those are high trust values, community values. They brought that with them from Korea, even while building a life in a country that operated completely differently. I inherited the values without fully understanding where they came from. Standing in that neighborhood, watching 7-year-olds walk to the store alone, I understood it a little bit better. I noticed something else too, over and over. Every cab driver we had was an older man. I did some digging when I got back, and this tracks with the pattern researchers have flagged. A work culture that pushes older workers out of corporate life earlier than you'd expect, even in a country that traditionally holds elders in high regard. I'm 51, and I noticed that from the backseat in a way that I wouldn't have 5 years ago. And we stayed with married cousins for a stretch, so I actually saw daily life up close, not just heard about it secondhand. Husbands work all day and come home late at night. The mandatory dinner and drinks with the boss and coworkers, that's real, not just something people complain about. And if the wife works too, there's literally no time left to have children. And I looked into the numbers after we got back, and South Korea's birth rate really is the lowest in the developed world, and researchers point mainly to that kind of work culture pressure, not a lack of desire for family. It's not that people don't want kids, it's that the system barely leaves room for the life that would come before them. Every big family meal in Korea comes with alcohol. Every one. Especially the big multi-generational dinners with my wife's family. And I'm not drinking. I haven't been drinking since episode 6. Declining the glass doesn't read the same way as it does back home. In LA, I have a script for it in my head, so it's routine to decline a drink. At a Korean table with soju going around, the pour is an act of affection, and turning it down can feel like turning down the person holding the bottle. Some nights I sat there eyeing the soju like, man, I know exactly what that tastes like. I know exactly how that night goes. And some part of me still wanted it. But my wife's family has been cool about it. Nobody made it a production. Nobody pushed. That's the same grace from episode 10. The Konglish, the bridge built out of whatever's available. Except this time the bridge was them not pouring me a glass I didn't want, and letting me stay at the table anyway. 10,000 miles from where I made that decision, it held. On a lighter note, Namdaemun Market gave us one of the funnier moments of the trip. We wandered into the noodle alley and got pulled, and I mean pulled, literally pulled, into a kalguksu spot by an ajumma who was not taking no for an answer. Turns out Jensen Wong ate at that exact place the week before us. His picture's up on the wall. And right across the street, Shinsegae. Marble floors and luxury brands, the complete opposite universe. Old Korea and New Korea facing off across one street. Songsu was its own thing entirely, the whole neighborhood running on Chinese. Half the crowd looking like live stream resellers. They were all narrating hauls back to viewers in China in real time. But underneath the fun stuff, here's the thing I actually want to name. It felt genuinely comforting being surrounded by Korean people everywhere we went. Like, these are my people. And then the second I opened my mouth in broken Konglish, I'd watch something shift. Confusion mostly. A face trying to reconcile what it was seeing with what it was hearing. That's not new. That's episode 10, playing out live for 2 weeks straight. What was new? My Korean hasn't gotten better. If anything, it's gotten worse. And my wife's cousin's English really isn't improving either. Why would it? So we're stuck, and this trip made it a lot harder to ignore. Episode 10 ended with me making peace with the gap, shame stepping aside, grace filling in the rest. This trip taught me that peace with the gap isn't the same as closing one. I watched two completely different tables hold two completely different kinds of families, and I realized I belong to both now. I watched a system built on trust I never grew up inside of and recognized the values underneath it as the ones my parents handed me without ever explaining where they came from. I sat at family dinners with soju going around and didn't drink, and it held. I got looks of confusion in elevators and noodle alleys and mostly laughed about it. And I found out that access to all of this, the real Korea, not the hotel version, was never something I earned. It was something I married into. Most people who look like me never get this trip. I almost didn't notice how rare it was until somebody at church told me they never had it. So here's a concrete thing, not a feeling, an action. I'm starting Korean lessons. Talk to me in Korean, TTMIK. Before the next trip, not after. My daughter does an hour a week with the tutor, so she has access to the door if she ever wants to walk through it. I'm finally walking through on my own. Not because shame is dragging me there this time, but because I decided the gap was actually worth closing, not just worth making peace with. To my daughter, you were there for some of this. You saw the tables, both of them. I hope you remember this trip as the one where your dad stopped just accepting the gap and started actually doing something about it. That's the inheritance this time. Not resolution, just the honest next step. Thanks for listening to episode 11 of I Took the Long Way. Take care of yourselves, and if nobody's told you lately, you're doing better than you think. I'll see you next time.